bears, EOTECH voodoos, and an emergency in the backcountry. Hey, welcome into another Gun Talk Hunt episode. It's a good episode. You're not going to want to miss this one. We are brought to you by Pyramyd Air, your #1 resource for everything air gun. So go check them out. PyramydAir.com. That's with 2 Y's. They do it a little different over there, especially their air guns. Today, I'm joined by a good buddy and industry friend for, honestly, I think we're going on like 12 years or something like that I've had the pleasure of knowing, JB from over at EOTECH. JB, how you doing?
Good. Doing great. Thanks for having me.
So, I don't know. I think it was 8 years ago, something like that. It was like, it's been a while since we visited the Idaho backcountry.
Yeah. I think it was around 2012, 13, somewhere in there.
So it's been a while, but so start out and explain what we were doing and why we were headed in, up the Selway River on horseback.
Yeah. So, EOTECH makes a holographic sight. It's a 1X sight. Around then we were, kind of into our second or third year of our magnifier, our 3-power magnifier. But our holographic sight is often known as more law enforcement, military, but you can really use it for hunting in most applications. If you're going to go long range, obviously you're not going to do that. But we wanted to kind of push our sights to the limits and, use them in a hunting situation. And the Selway in Idaho was like the ultimate. So, we partnered with Smith & Wesson and put our stuff on top of their AR-10 and went out to beautiful Idaho to the Flying Bee and did just an incredible hunt. It
was amazing. Now, when you talk about stretching, what you're able to do, a bear's vitals is not that big. And we tested these optics just before because I was working in the PR game with Smith & Wesson, and you sent all the optics down. I'm like, oh man, this is actually a little bit more difficult because, up close and personal, 100 yards in, that's not a problem. But I was not prepared, and I was a marathon runner at the time. I'd been in training. I'd been ready to go, and I was not prepared what Idaho had for me. Like, I was absolutely not prepared.
And you were more fit than I was.
Yeah. But you were better conditioned for it, which is kind of counterintuitive, but it's true.
Maybe. But you're right. When you talk about a red dot, basically we're holographic, much different, but still a red dot, non-magnified. What helps in that situation? Because, we were counting on our guys to get us close. I was hoping for 50, 75 yard shot, to be honest with you, but I knew there was going to be longer range, more possibilities of longer range. Right. The beauty of our sight, whether it's magnified or not, is our dot is a 1 MOA dot. So it's the smallest dot you can get. So when you're looking at something at 200 yards, it's still only covering 2 inches of that vital. So I was kind of counting on the accuracy of the dot to help us out a little bit. And then when you throw a magnifier behind it, the beauty of holography is the dot stays the same size. Okay. So now your bear is 3 times bigger, but your dot is the same size. So now you're that much more precise. So again, we're pushing the limits, but if you're going to do it with a red dot or a 1X sight with a magnifier, there's probably nothing better.
There really isn't. And, when we were sighting these in, it was almost like it was exactly what you said. Your dot isn't growing and covering the entire vital sign. So we were getting really good groups out at 300, 350 yards. And then after that, it's a lot of trigger control. It's a lot of, what your rest is. And we were counting heavily on the guides at Flying Bee.
Sure.
But no, we packed up, and they have options at the Flying Bee for baited hunts. And you guys did not want that.
No.
That was what was cool about it, because they were like, well, yeah, we have baited hunts where you can, you go and you set up on a bait about 25 yards or so, and you're probably going to shoot something. It's a guaranteed. But this was an industry hunt like I've never been on. Right. There is no guarantees in this.
No. And actually we had good success, but not great success for the amount of people we had. But, a baited hunt is good. I'm in the marketing game. So if I take a dealer customer, a baited hunt is good because he gets to kill something. You get to have that relationship. but PR is different. We need to get those riders content.
Oh yeah.
There's not much content over a baited hunt. There is a ton of content, hiking in on horseback 15 miles, and staying in a wall tent, for a period of time with no showers, so it's totally different game.
We were all very ripe by the end of this hunt. It really was amazing to sit there. And I mean, you're riding 15 miles. And so it took us the better part of, 6 to 8 hours of riding time.
Yeah.
And we'd stop and we'd, and eat and you're just looking at these steep mountains, which from the plains of Oklahoma is a lot different. And because there's some elevation change.
Yeah. And I'll tell you the shame on me, I guess, but I didn't think they were going to take the horses away. So when you go 15 miles to the camp and he said, all right, I'm going to take the horses back. I'm like, well, how are we going to get around? And
yeah, we had a base. They had a base camp set up for us
right
when we arrived. But this isn't normal, like base camp. Like it was like a tent city. Like there was 3 tents. One was the chow tent.
Yep.
And that, like setting all that up and packing all that in, there was nowhere to fly in. There was nowhere. You had to pack all that stuff in.
That's
so they were, probably weeks ahead of us to set all this up.
Yep.
And we were only walking from that point on.
Yeah. We were basically at the crotch of a little valley, right? So we were at one point and, to go look for them, you had to go up or down. And if you went up, you had to come back down.
I know, which was the down was almost as bad as the up, but I would definitely take the down over the up.
Yeah.
So the first day, I'm thinking, okay, I've got boots. I'm good with the boots. And then David Fabian is with us and he's wearing tennis shoes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, God, it's going to really suck to be him at the end of the day. Like it's going to be awful. But then at the end of the day, he was good and it was awful on me. Like I had 2 pairs of socks. He only had 1. And I had blisters along my feet, my foot pad that was awful. Awful.
He definitely had a cheat sheet on that hunt because he brought the right gear, the right clothing. He brought solar things to help power phones. And I mean, he definitely talked to somebody about a hunt like this and prepared and didn't share with anybody.
No, he did not share with me, who I ended up hunting with him the majority of the time. But yeah, you were kind of on your own with a guide, and our guide, Arby.
Yeah.
Was phenomenal. He was an amazing guide. But what you would do is you would go up the side of these mountains and you weren't hunting that mountain. You were hunting the one across from it.
Right.
Which having the magnifier on the optic was levels above where I thought we would be and what we would see. And I think it was the first set when we went up and we hiked in the next day. Fabian got a shot on one.
Okay.
So he had a shot on one across the ridge. And he just missed it. And we decided that he had missed low because we had saw where the bear ran through. But he had just shot low on it. And I think it was a lot of rest because the angle that we had to get to, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right. So it was a kind of an angled shot and he just wasn't prepared for it. And, when you hike and you see a bear and you're like, well, he's moving this way, so we need to follow him. So you're following on the, that mountainside.
Right.
So your heart rate's increasing. And then all of a sudden you have a window of 6 feet that you can get them. And this was a springtime bear hunt.
Right.
Which they're just now coming out of the dens. And we, at the end, had thought we were maybe 2 weeks early.
I think so.
I think that's what we kind of ended up talking about. But, but yeah, it was
Well, yeah,
different.
You mentioned heartbeat too. So you have the mountains, the terrain, maybe the short window of time that you could shoot. And then you set up and your heartbeat, that dot's got to be going,
it's moving
above the bear and below the bear. So you got to time that shot too.
Yeah. You got to time it. And I think one thing that I've kind of figured out in how I do my loadout pack, and, it was so you would hunt all day, and then we'd be back at night. So you would pack, you know, your sandwiches and your snacks and your waters and everything like that. But how I've started packing my pack now is a little bit different. Like I'll fill it out. Whereas then I was like, oh, I can't have anything in it. And, you know, I want to trim as much weight. Now they've got these bags that are super lightweight that'll fill in spaces. And I think that would help, you know, steady those shots.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
But now we do have a few other optics laid out in front of us. And we've got one of the XPSs, which is what we were using at the time. But now you guys have the HWS, which is brilliant. It looks beautiful. But now I'm looking at what we've got laid out on the table, and I'm like, man, that would have made it. There wouldn't been no challenge to this.
No, you still deal with the elements for sure.
Oh yeah,
you know, and the heartbeat and all that. But you know, we have we introduced a line of what we call Voodoo premium rifle scopes in 2017, and we came out with a pretty narrow but thorough family. So we have a 1 to 6 all the way up to 5 to 25, even an 8 to 32, like a more of a bench rest scope. So yeah, if we had even the 1 to 6 would double our magnification.
Oh, absolutely.
So certainly would have been a lot more helpful in situations like that.
Just a little bit, but yeah, the Voodoo line is an amazing deal. But there was a couple things that happened on that hunt that I'll never forget. And one of them I'll never forget because I pretty much slept through the whole thing. But we had the camp cook, amazing guy, amazing cook. When Luke Hartle shot his bear, he cooked up like kind of an appetizer, tenderloin appetizer for us, which was it was the best bear I've ever eaten to this day.
No question.
But I think it was the night that he cooked that, something happened, and it was terrifying.
It was actually for me 2 different ways, because I was the one that was awake first.
Yeah.
So, and the whole mountainside Idaho experience was all new to me. So I had woken up, or even that wasn't sleeping well or something, and I heard like moaning outside, and I immediately thought it was a bear.
Right.
Because outside the camp tent, or the cook tent, was where all our coolers were.
Right.
You know, and they had them kind of locked down, but you know, a bear can easily still get into them. So I heard like, you know, kind of groaning and moaning, and
it was loud.
It was. And I was freaking out. I had my rifle under my bed. I'm looking around, and all you guys are still just.
We were sacked out.
You were wiped out. I'm like, all right, well, maybe it'll just go away. And it just kept going on and on and on. And I'm like, all right, I got to wake somebody up. I'm like, guys, you hear this? And they're like, everybody kind of woke up groggy and heard it again. And it turned out it wasn't a bear.
It wasn't a bear. It was our camp cook was having an episode. He was having
diabetic.
A diabetic like seizure, essentially. And so you guys jumped up, and I guess I was so out of it that I ended up kind of sleeping through it, but I heard everything. But then I heard a lot of guys, a bigger group growing. Gun Talk Hunt is also brought to you by ATN. Hey, ATN has partnered with Mossy Oak to bring you 3 different pattern options for your Thor 4, Thor LT, Excite LTV, and the factory refurbished Excite 4K. It's available in Breakup Country, Bottomland, and the Elements Terra, which is one of my favorites. But honestly, I'll probably end up sticking with the Bottomland because it's so dang traditional. But cutting edge technology meets quality parts in every ATN product. Find your next optic at atncorp.com. And you guys had ushered him into the cook tent.
No, he actually was sleeping in there.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. He and Jeremy and Arby, the guides, slept in there along the sides where the table wasn't. So they were in there. They were sleeping too. I think David Fabian was the first in there. And I think he's got a little bit of paramedic training or some medical training at least. So he was in there and quickly kind of diagnosed and woke those guys up. And they started kind of attending to him.
Well, and I think there was a question at the time, like, how are we going to extract him?
Right.
Like, how are we going to get him from 15 miles in to out? safely and get him out. And with Fabian there, so this is actually really interesting. And this is something that you should always know is get to know your guides and get to know their interest and stuff like that. Because one of the reasons why he was able to kind of say, okay, he is clear, he is speaking and stuff like that. He asked him what book he was reading.
That's right.
At the time.
Right. Yeah.
And I just remember that sticking out because he was able to cite it back to him.
Right.
And so, okay, now I know he's coherent and we can proceed with proper treatment. And when I woke up, I was like, what's going on? And you guys were kind of talking through it, and he ended up leaving.
Well, actually, he did, but, I guess they determined that when you go through an experience like that, you need to just kind of shut down for 24, 36 hours. Yep. And so that day he stayed in camp, but he just
didn't do anything.
Didn't get up. The guides cooked, and we went out and hunted, came back, and he seemed to be doing better. The next morning, the guides cooked, and it turned out he had another episode. So that's when they got on the sat phone and they called somebody to come in and
extract him and get him out.
Yeah.
But man, that was a terrifying. It was a terrifying experience. When you don't expect anything like that to happen on the side of a mountain.
No.
And thankfully David Fabian, great guy. He was there and he kind of was able to manage a lot of that situation.
Right.
And having good guides definitely helped.
Well, it makes you think too. I mean, that was very serious. It makes you think going up and down those mountains, a broken leg, you fall and you hit your head, how do that's 15 miles, through there where no vehicles or helicopters, nothing can get through there. So it makes you, really wonder and take a little bit more caution and steps and how you approach, the terrain there.
Yeah. You don't go bounding up and down mountains, as freely,
right?
When you're in the right mindset and you're in the thought of, okay, there is no one around. Like I've got this pack of guys. This is
except that one guy. Do you remember the shed hunter?
Oh my gosh.
That guy disobeyed every rule of safety. I mean, he was just flying up and down hills. He had 4 or 5 sheds on his back.
Yeah. And so the Selway River was running. Like this isn't a meandering river. It was roaring, and he was in this little like canoe with sheds and everything else, and he'd just go up. And tell the story, because the shed hunter, okay, let me just paint this picture for you. So there's this guy hadn't showered, hadn't shaved, hadn't cut his hair in 8 years.
Yeah, probably.
Something.
Yeah. Closest thing to a Wookiee I've ever seen in the woods.
That is 100% accurate. 100%. But his calves and his legs were about the size of redwoods.
Yep.
I mean, the dude, and this is what he lived for. He would spend his time shed hunting.
Yeah.
In this area and all over Idaho.
Yep. Yeah, I remember seeing him. He was coming down. I think it was called Tango. Do you remember Tango?
Yes.
Oh my God.
I don't like Tango.
It was the steepest, highest mountain I've ever probably climbed.
It was awful.
But unfortunately, I was going up and he was coming down, and it was like he was walking in my neighborhood. He had no breath. He wasn't, breathing heavy. He wasn't sweating. He wasn't tired. It was just a walk in the park.
Oh, it was a walk in the park.
And I was buckled over,
Oh yeah.
We were ready to throw up.
Oh, can I get a time out here, please? Yeah. But what was interesting about him too is, so he would talk about like the sheds that he would find, and he's looking for elk. He's looking for mule deer. He said he'd have a barn full, like an entire barn full of sheds. That was his life insurance, I guess. I don't know. I mean, and that's expensive.
Heck yeah, it is.
And I actually did find one. It's funny. I found a shed on the hunt, and they shipped it back to me and everything. And it actually sits in my kitchen, and everybody has signed it. And I get reminded of that hunt every day. But this guy, so he would find a shed and he would take off running after it. Mm-hmm. And you'd find all these caches, throughout the wilderness, and he would just stay out there.
Right.
Months months at a time. And I think when we encountered him, he had been out in the wilderness for 20 days.
I think so.
Something like that.
Yeah, and had another 20 planned, I think.
Yeah. So I don't know what he did for a living. Didn't he work? I don't know.
I don't remember.
Hiked mountains or something.
He
did
took
it
a lot
well.
of personal time off if he did. If
Oh,
he worked
yeah.
somewhere.
You know what? I actually believe he worked for like a gas company or something like that.
Okay.
Like walking pipelines or something like that. But the people you meet, like no one should have been there.
No, I never would have thought we would have crossed paths with anybody.
No. Out where you're 15 miles in the backwoods.
Right.
And he got there by walking. He didn't like ride a ATV or UTV
Nope.
or horse, llama, like nothing. And he would pack out. So he would find sheds. When I first saw him, I think we were coming down Tango, and he was camped along the side of the river.
Right.
And I was like, oh my gosh, because they talked about him. So Arby and Jeremy would talk about this, like this guy, like he's this mythical creature.
Right.
Of like, oh yeah, you'll see every once in a while you'll see him. And I'm like, oh, well, this is cool. And then all of a sudden we're coming up on like this little encampment along the river. And I'm like, hey, is that him? And then you smelled him.
Yeah.
Cause like,
you didn't have to be close either.
You did not have to be close. You're like, oh yeah,
there he is.
The Sasquatch is near. That's how rumors get started that there are Bigfoots.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah.
And he was in like these, like,
yeah, if he would have walked like that,
oh yeah, it was like that Bigfoot, like that Bigfoot stance.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we would have drawn a gun and been like, I didn't know Bigfoot was blonde.
Yeah, he's carrying sheds.
Yeah, Bigfoot's like sheds. Apparently, I don't know, but no, it goes to show you never know who you're going to see. You never know what you're going to encounter on a mountain. Like, the physical challenges. I definitely would prepare differently. Yeah. Would you?
I would have. Yeah. I definitely would have brought a little bit better walking shoes. I had 2 head boots that I was kind of assuming I was going to be in muck and things like that. So I wore a heavier boot that I didn't necessarily need. But yeah, part of it is just living it and learning the experience and hoping you can get back out there and plan better. But
yeah. And I think that's one of the big. And actually, Fabian ended up going back to that same area.
He's going. I just talked to him. He's going again in like a couple weeks.
He's going again.
Yeah.
So he's ate up with it. I'm ate up with it to get up there. I'm David Fabian. If you're listening to this, I'm a little jealous. Actually, JB and I both are a little jealous that you didn't invite us.
Yeah, the phone didn't ring.
Yeah, I'm still waiting. But I want to get back out there. I know you do. But it is a special place.
It is.
And the lodging, we haven't even talked about the lodging of Flying Bee.
Yeah. And that, when you leave there and go to the wall tent, you really miss it really fast.
Really fast. Fully stocked bar. Big beds.
Oh yeah.
Your own room.
Yeah. The rooms were incredible. The bar and they had pool tables and darts and all that stuff. It was.
Yeah. But at the time when we got back, like, I don't know if anybody fully enjoyed like the experience that we got at the Flying Bee, because we were still talking about what we had experienced on the mountain.
Yeah, there was a kind of a relief that you're back in a little bit of civilization and able to shower and have a drink and all that. But
it's the creature comforts that we miss.
But you immediately miss being out there and doing all of that once you're separated from it.
So we've been talking about the experience of the mountain and everything else, but we haven't talked about like bears that were shot and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Let's get into that.
Yeah. So I was fortunate enough to be one of the shooters and also be a camera guy on Luke Hartle's bear.
Yep.
So, I had Jeremy as our guide, and again, he was equally as good as Arby.
He's
just knows the terrain and knows how to handle it, where to go, where to glass. And Luke was the first one to shoot one, and we spotted it on the other side of the Selway, one of the drainages.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful cinnamon bear, really pretty bear. And, I'm no professional camera guy. We had a nice camera, but again, it was nothing that I would have brought again. It was a huge camera and a big, heavy tripod. And I got that thing on my shoulder. I got a rifle on my shoulder as well, just in case there's a second bear. so we're trekking through and we find the cinnamon down close to the water, and we're way up top. So we got to work our way all the way down and try to find a shot. And it was really difficult to get through all that, especially down in those drainages. That's where a lot of trees fall and all that stuff. So you're managing all of that terrain. And Luke finally got into a position where I think it was about a 200-yard shot, and hit it the first time. It kind of moved around. He's put a nice second shot in there, and it just rolled,
all the way down.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when I'm watching that, I'm like, that's cool, but it's going further and further away from us. It's more, so it ended up expiring pretty much right by the water. So we had to go all the way down to the bottom. And now I'm thinking it's on the other side of this rushing water. So now what the hell do you do? So we got down there and took a break. We saw it, it was dead there. So we didn't have to do any tracking or anything like that, but we took
how
a break.
You want it.
Yeah. We took a break and crossed over a pretty big down log. And, that again is a pretty scary experience.
Stressful.
Yeah. Especially carrying all your gear and all that stuff. One slip of the foot and you're in that water, and it's probably going to take you downwards quite a ways and ruin everything you have. So you got to take, baby steps and work your way. It was pretty scary, but we got onto the other side and found it. And it was just an awesome experience. Luke was ecstatic. I was, because we had success on the hunt. The whole hunt was a great story for him. I knew it was, so it was a really cool experience.
Well, and I think, not many people are going to be taking M&P 10s, 308s out, hunting, let alone taking an holographic XPS with a magnifier on it.
Right.
Not a lot of people are doing that.
Right.
And I thought that's one of the coolest parts about it. But the other folks, we would see bears. I put a stock on a bear that we were like, well, we don't know if it's going to stay out. And this bear was, oh man, when I'm thinking about it, it's probably a good 1,000 yards away or something like that. You just see this little black dot moving.
Right.
And well, okay, let's put a stock on it. And so we'd, side saddle this mountain down and then start coming up on the other side. And we got where we thought it was going to be, roughly in that area, and it had already gone.
Right.
And you guys were over there trying to wave us down, like calling it off, and we're still making the move, we just didn't know any better. And
there was that one bear that showed up in the same spot every day. And Fabi, and again, he was the one that, let's go get on that.
Yeah.
And I think it was Jeremy that said, you don't understand. It's like 3 ridges away. It's like up and down, up and down, up and down before you can probably, shoot that thing. And who knows if it'll even be there once you get there. So,
right. And even in the spotter, it was a small dot.
Right.
You would see it and you're like, oh yeah, man, it's there. And it was there every day.
Yeah.
And it was just a long ways away.
Yeah.
Backcountry hunts, man, I highly recommend them.
It was fun. It was fun. And mine was similar to Luke's, but mine was way up on the other ridge. So we had the same thing. We were on top of a ridge, and Jeremy spotted it. And it was a speck at the time too. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, maybe
we're going to go get that?
Yeah.
Come on, man.
So we worked our way down our ridge until we were kind of even with my bear. And, so I had an opportunity to kind of catch my breath and relax and get the right rest. And I propped my, my rifle on a good bipod, and I just took my time. And, it was like a 325-yard shot. So I think it put that product to
put it to the test.
Sure.
When you start stretching it out like a holographic sight out past 300, that's a good shot.
Yeah. What scared me was the first shot felt really good, but it didn't even phase it. He didn't even move. So Jeremy said, put another round in him, and I shot again, and he just ran off into the thickets without really kind of bucking up or anything. And so now I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I
missed
or wounded or something. So, anytime you do that, you got to go look, right? So
absolutely.
I have it in my mind that this thing's not going to be there. And so we had to go all the way down, cross the water again, and go all the way back
all
up.
the way up.
Yeah. And the whole time I'm thinking this is just a waste of time because I think I missed, you know, although the shots felt good, but I think I missed just because of the reaction of the bear. And so we got to pretty much where the bear was when I shot. And again, I was sweating and buckled over, you know,
panting.
Yeah. Gasping for breath. And Jeremy, who wasn't, just kept walking, and he went another 100 yards into all the thick cedar stuff. And he said, JB, come here. So sure enough, I went up there and there it was laying. So it was,
you're like, thank goodness we don't have to hike anymore.
Yeah. It was easiest 100 yards I've walked that whole time. But yeah, it was a great experience, and it was fun. It really did put it to the test, to put your shooting skills to the test, to put your endurance to the test. And it's just a fabulous, fabulous hunt.
I'm going to tell you this right now. You got to give yourself a couple of days to ease into it, because I was so sore. My feet were sore. My legs were sore because you didn't sit still until you got up to a good glassing spot.
Right.
And I would do it all in a heartbeat.
Well, and that Tango that mountain called Tango is like one of the steepest ones. And that was like the first one that we climbed that first day. And actually when we got back, I said, I wanted them to make me a shirt that said I conquered Tango.
Yeah.
But when we got up there, I didn't know what the goal was. And it turned out, like you said earlier, you get up there to glass other ridges. So we got up there, and again, I was out. So Jeremy says, well, just relax and we'll glass. So I still have a picture of me on my phone, and that I put my hat over my eyes and I slept. I fell asleep.
I do remember that picture.
Yeah, I still have it. While he was doing all the work, I was catching some shut eye because it just wiped me out.
Oh,
it was crazy.
It'll, man, if you haven't hiked up a mountain or something like the Tango, I highly recommend it. But JB, thank you so much for joining and sharing a little bit about, like,
makes me want to go back. You know, it's been a long time, and I haven't talked about it that thoroughly. And man, now
we're itching to get back. We need to plan something.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's time to return to the Selway. But anyway, guys, thanks for joining Gun Talk Hunt. Always be safe and keep those muzzles pointing in the right direction.